The Disrupt Education vlog can be found on YouTube. To hear it in podcast form, search Disrupt Education on any of the following podcast platforms: Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or Stitcher. All right, we're on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Peter Hostrasser here. Great guest today. Friend, entrepreneur, just kick butt guy around education. That's what I'm going to... That's a terrible intro for you, but I have Uzair Hussain here. Uzair, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really great, and that's an awesome intro. I'll take it. Very humbling.
Kick butt of everything.
Yeah.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit, man. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing these days, man.
Yeah, I'm in the Midwest these days, so I'm an entrepreneur. I primarily work in technology and product development. That's where I spent the majority of the last 10, 15 years. But yeah, I was born in Pakistan, immigrant, came to the States with my family when I was about 4 years old. Started at CPS and then grew up in District 204, actually, Indian Prairie in Naperville. So hopefully that's a little bit of a synopsis, but we could get into the details on some of those things.
As an entrepreneur, I mean, you've done a lot of different things. I kind of want to dig into that because you got a great past, not only just with systemic education and being, an immigrant, and then also, you learned a lot through the businesses that you've worked and grown and, succeeded at and failed at and all that. So where do you want to start on that? Because, let's start with like being an immigrant and coming into, were you a child like coming into CPS? How old were you when you entered the States? And then what was that transition like? We'll start there in like systemic schools.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. I don't think many people have asked me about some of these details. Parents brought me over. So, my two biological mother and father who have passed now, but at the time they brought my older brother and myself over. Many years later, we also have two younger brothers that were also born here in the States. But I started at preschool in CPS. So we moved it was called the medical apartments. They were across what was Cook County Hospital back then. Now it's Stroger. And, we spent about a year or two there, and then my parents moved us to the suburbs. So we moved to Downers Grove, and I went to Henry Puffer Elementary School. And then from there, my dad and my mom somehow managed to buy a home and build a home in Naperville in 1994. And, that looking back now, I mean, it's almost magical, that whole set of events right there and what that, transpired years forward. But, what I remember is starting off in the foreign language, support classes, maybe in preschool, but I don't really remember spending much time in those after that. Was always curious, had my fair share of, getting into trouble or, incompletions. So I grew up in Indian Prairie School District. I was pretty much the only brown guy or brown person really there. There was one other family that was in our court. It's very different now in Naperville with the population these days. Graduated from Waubonsie Valley in 2004, and that took me down the path of university. So I started at UIC, decided to start with biological sciences and click clack my way through that. Eventually dropped out. Didn't have a plan to come back, and life brought me back. There's so much there, but yeah, that immigrant kind of jump off. The critical things that I remember is, just being amongst normal society, still going to Pakistan every other year to visit our family in Karachi, I'm fluent in Urdu and Hindi. And so, even growing up Muslim, I was also part of the Islamic school, the Islamic Center of Naperville. So my mom was really critical about keeping those values and keeping them strong. That's what got me to kind of move around with other districts and meet other friends that were in other suburbs, whether it's Schaumburg or Lisle or Bolingbrook. That kind of got me, moving along.
Let's take a look then. So there was that little gap. Like, what did you do after you left college, right? So I know the answer to this, but I think our listeners can kind of understand. Like, you jumped into I want to call it technological problem solving, right? There were so many different areas where you were on teams, you were around technologies, emerging technologies, and being a part of that. What happened? What happened in those years?
Yeah.
And by the way, I am going to spoil it. You do have a college degree, but I do. So not, we're disruptive education here. So not that that's better or worse, but you did go back and finish. But let's go into that, man. You learned a lot in with a lot of entities. What were those, and what were you doing then?
I didn't know. I didn't have a plan. I mean, what got me to move to California or start the company in the first place was just, sheer stubbornness. I was applying a lot to corporate companies, like all throughout. I spent majority of my teenage years in retail sales, selling everything from clothes to electronics to you name it, right? Like all across malls, whatever. And my last retail kind of engagement, or my second to last, was at Apple. And I was still trying to get into corporate, and it just wasn't happening. People say, "Oh, do this, do that," but it takes a lot to kind of break that chasm. I didn't have my degree at the time, so it was just very hard to break through that plateau. And I figured, you know what, like, screw this. I'm going to just jump in the deep end, and if I'm going to do it, all my people that I've looked up to, this wasn't a blocker for them. I learned what a blocker is much later on, but these things didn't hold them back. So why should they hold me back? And what's the worst that can happen? At that point, first parent had passed. So when my mom passed, it kind of gave me this like afterburner. That's what happens when these critical moments happen. And that afterburner got me to California, jump in the deep end, start building another technology app, right? Because I was coming from the app store at Apple, like selling the app store and the stores. When I built my own product, and I didn't know this because I was applying for product manager internships, trying to get into corporate, and this wasn't happening. Nobody told me just go build a product. I just did that because that's what I knew, right? Like selling websites or selling whatever it was. I just figured, okay, I've never built an app before, but I'm sure I could figure that out too. I eventually ended up like building something alongside a group of people over the course of many years, almost 10 years, that happened to be so different and so set apart that it opened up all these other opportunities that I never planned for. That business or that product didn't pay for my bills. It didn't cover my rent. It didn't put food on the table. It got me some press. It got me some tweets, some likes and shares, but it didn't feed me, right? And that was really, really disheartening, difficult, challenging. But along the way, people said, "Hey, we saw what you did over here. Could you help us with this?" Then I'd push my product further. Someone else would see it. They'd say, "Hey, can you help us with this?" And so that's sort of been my journey, is like just natural curiosity driving me places, building some skills that I didn't know, or applying them to a constant project or something that I'm working on. And, either that ends up paying for it, which thankfully nowadays that it's gotten to that point, or, it's other projects that are supplementing that, it's been a quirky journey. A lot of cool brands though, a lot of cool products, that I've been able to work on.
And with that, like when we met a few years back, we literally sat down, had coffee, and then just started busting out how are we going to change up education, and using the app that you were currently working on, and now that you're into this new one. Let's unpack that a little bit. You did mention a blocker. Let's tell everybody what a blocker is. That's number one. Because once I figured that out and I was able to tell my students that, it was something that was just an eye opener. It's like, oh yeah, there is something stopping me, right? And then the other thing was, where are you taking this with your own journey? Because there's a couple of different ways with who you are, and also you took your interests and you built on it and you kind of figured it out along the way. I think that's where education's going, where people are figuring out what are you interested in, then everything else connects to that. So let's start first with blockers, and what are you doing to break down those blockers, especially for the students and even educators in general?
As I didn't know this, right? It's not until you step out of the Kool-Aid that you get to see, these life events that happened to me. They shocked me out of my comfort zone, whether it was a parent passing or something not working or a friendship's fault, whatever it was. I just realized that there was always something coming up, unless it's death, right? Then nothing else will come up. That'll be the last event, right? But something kept coming up, but then there was always this requirement to get back up and get going, right? Because nobody slows down for you. It's like I learned from people close to me leaving this earth that it really doesn't happen on the time that we planned. And we hear this in keynotes and all these things, like the Steve Jobs commencement speech drove me to that, thinking it didn't sink in until it actually happened. And hopefully I still have long life and we all do ahead. But when I was working in California, or I was spending time there, especially in startups, we had this process that we started doing stand-ups, right? And even that started emerging. This was when like product management, product owners, project management, this whole space was evolving, and I was helping out at General Assembly kind of put that space together in Los Angeles. And through these stand-ups, it was clear that there's a process for everyone to work together in a group on a common goal. Even though we were all on different projects or we're working on different companies, we all came together for this common goal, at this studio I was at. And I didn't plan to do anything with that. It was just cool. Sounds great. That's a cool thing to do. I was working on my alarm clock at the time. And that was a product I was working on for about 10 years. Our mission was to help people wake up focused and motivated. And we inevitably said we failed because, we woke up over 1 million people across the world in different countries, regions, but they kept snoozing. And, we thought, wow, like, okay, it's funny, right? It's like, yo, you failed. Yeah, I kind of did, because we had, much more to do. And that's where you and I met. I was really at the last sort of step of Clue is what that product was called. And, I was finding myself in schools, and at that point trying to help high school students and middle schoolers. And we were just doing these stand-ups, and it became clear through those stand-ups and daily check-ins that these kids didn't have this language, that they didn't know what a blocker was. Or once they started to understand, it wasn't just the word. It was like, oh, we all get together and work together whenever we have this sort of, it's like we all step away from what we've all thought and assumed. And when we come into this group environment with this language, we all work together, right? And that to me was just like, building products for so many years, it was like a aha moment where I thought, well, what is this? Like, what's happening here, right? So that's sort of like where we met. And so to wrap up the long tail thought, what is a blocker? It's essentially anything that holds a human back from accomplishing or attaining their goals, or slows that human down from attaining that goal. A blocker cannot be removed, So it cannot be deleted from your life, like an emotion cannot just be deleted from your memory. But a blocker, we believe, can be resolved. So you could walk around it, you could chip away at it, you could try to just remove the whole thing, right? But there'll still be some skimmages left over. You could run off and come back and see that it's still there, right? So it's just a different framework for things like impediments or issues or anything that's in the way.
The funny thing about this is you just mentioned so many things that educators see with students, like you're blocked constantly, right? I think a lot of educators see that, but we don't quite understand it, right? We don't understand each and every student. And I think when we worked together, we kind of uncovered those things, which was super, super cool. But then it led to DistrictZero, and let's really start to take a look at the social emotional learning categories. Let's start putting into what I like is what you really taught me, if I may. Tell me if I'm way off here, but like as a technology team, you have a problem. You go through the UX design or the design thinking or all these different, problem solving techniques and theories and whatnot. But in reality, isn't that what we're doing in education? And in education, each student has their own story, and a lot of them, like yourself, felt maybe a little bit isolated because there wasn't somebody like you or looked like you or felt like you. You just didn't know. Man, we broke that open a little bit, and this is what you're doing with DistrictZero. We take a class, a cohort, or however the school is set up, and guess what? We're all going to help each other teammate up where we have a problem to solve, and that problem could be math. That problem could be art. It could be anything, right? It could be just generalized life, which usually is where you start. So, did I hit it? Is that where we are?
I think it's special because you're a different breed of teacher.
Oh, I know.
You really, and I think that's where we meshed, and that's where I meshed with any other teachers that actually start using DistrictZero or are all excited just as I am about it. Is this idea of a couple things. One is fail fast. So this idea of like that aligns totally with me in design thinking and product development world, because quick, don't take 9 months to figure something out and then fail. Do it quick. Now, what do we need? What do we have right now? Duct tape it together, figure it out, right? Just like so that idea was one thing. The other is this idea of teachers knowing that they're facilitators of knowledge as opposed to the holders of knowledge, right? That's where you and I aligned, because you didn't say, hey, Uzair, I know design thinking and I'm going to teach it because I'm the teacher here, right? My students are expecting me to know everything. However you did it, you had an environment set up where you allowed a guest instructor for 10 days essentially come in and lead your class, right? And you even grew. You showed your own learning moments to the students. And I didn't know that this is SEL. I didn't come in, I was like, oh my God, social emotion. No, this was just like, as you're the one who showed me the SEL wheel, the castle wheel, right? You were like, hey, and to me, that was like the product hat went on. I was like, wait a minute. As somebody that's a wild card in life, anytime I find some bumpers and some guardrails where I could like, chip away at a rock or a piece of coal and build into a diamond, I love that. And that's what I saw. I was like, all these pieces were coming together. I was like, thank you, framework over here, innovative teacher over here. The kids listened to me because I was coming in with the idea of, I don't know, I'm also figuring things out. I kind of failed at my last product. So, and so I think it was all of that just culminating, to then, say, all right, this is where education should be going, or we should be thinking about it a little differently.
This is where it is going, I think, and it has to. We figured out a lot in the pandemic and understanding the big pivot. And I think one of the things that you said is very important. We've always known systems move like a glacier, right? They're very slow. They're very, and we start leaving things behind. The world is moving faster than education, and that's just no disrespect on anybody, but it's just the way it is. And there's a change that's happening. And, you know, in order to, let's highlight like on the student side of things, right? So let's unpack DistrictZero real quick. So this is basically how you're disrupting education in such a way where the students have their own voice, they have their own path. They actually get to really figure out, well, how do they want to remove their own blockers? I don't say you need to do this or there's not an adult in the room that's there's a guidance piece. Let's unpack what a student walks through as they go through DistrictZero. So just a brief the intro level of DistrictZero, if you will. What does that look like?
You know, for a student, think of it as this like 24/7 soundboard that's available for you. You know, it's a support soundboard. That's really like how I think of it. And when I put myself as a student, is a place, a psychological safety net, an environment where I can just go every day if I want, right? I can have a place to just run through a few critical emotions or critical routines. And at first I'm wondering, why am I answering these things, or why is it the same thing each day? What I'm really then seeing an effect in is kind of like when you go to the same gym every day, right? You might say, hey, this is the same gym. It's the same machine. There's the same track. It doesn't change in size. Why do I keep on coming to the same? Because you're optimizing your performance in that, right? And so that's what a student sees is, first, it's just a soundboard. You can go express your thoughts. If you say anything that's really, that might show difficulty, or you're going through some hardships, you'll be given some resources and tools immediately. And, it's also, you have a relationship built with, so it's the system. That way you have that trust, but you have a leader, and that leader is a human. It's somebody that's guiding you along the way. So it's somebody that you trust. It could be a teacher, it could be a social worker, it could be a vocational instructor. For me, a lot of the times it's just kids that want to work on, entrepreneurship or something. And they're like, hey, can I just, could you be my leader, a mentor, accountability, whatever you want to call it. And that person is saying, hey, I'm going to help you in your journey, whatever your journey is, whether you want to be an astronaut, whether you want to be a doctor, whether you want to be a chef, whether you want to be a YouTube a talent, right? Like any path that you've chosen, I'm going to, as a leader, help you resolve whatever blockers come up. It might be your day-to-day blocker, it might be a big one, and you're like, I don't know how the heck I'm going to tackle this. As an immigrant, I had a lot of those. Like, it's like you make these small things look massive. And that's another thing with blockers is the way you look at a blocker is not the same way someone else looks at it. So that's the big thing in the system, is we're all working together on our blockers, but what's really happening is we're building a community of blocker resolutions, right? Everyone working together. So
running students through what we've saw, I've run it at 2 different schools, and on brief small things as we're trying to UX design this and everything. And it is truly amazing because you are exercising, if we could stay on the treadmill, but you're exercising that self-awareness, right? You're exercising that you're taking a pause, because we know in education, especially secondary education, but this works all levels. But in secondary education, the students are bell 1, bell 2, bell 3, bell 4, practice. I just got off the bus. I got to get to the bus. There's a lunch. Am I going to eat today? I don't, so there's so many different things that are happening. It allows for that. It's very amazing, dude. I mean, and it's been an honor actually to continue to work with you, because you're right. I have learned a lot about myself as an educator and as humans, and I've created some very good relationships with students who are very quiet about things, and they were silently suffering, and they didn't feel like they had a place, especially even in a pandemic. When some students were in-house and some students were not even in-house, we found that this was working. I want to give a chance to have you say to the listeners, how can they contact you? How can they get some more information about this amazing? Do you want to call it an app? I mean, it's an application. I don't know. It's like it's a piece of social emotional learning that,
I mean, first and foremost, before I jump into like a plug on that, I got to commend you as a teacher, right? As an educator, you really created this safe space for me as a product designer, developer to work, right? As a design thinker. And, I've seen you talk so much about student first learning, student first, and it's just now sinking into me how important that is and why this program even worked. Like for a teacher, it wasn't the bell schedule happened on the routine for us when we were in the pilot. What was different about what we were doing was we built in a part of that routine to allow the student voice to come in, and we responded or acknowledged that voice every single day, the following days period. So we ran a Delta Plus at the end of that class, and then you iterated your curriculum every single day, right? Based off that. That is where a student starts to feel like they are getting back in somewhat control. Right now, why the bells are so annoying is because I can't say anything, right? It's like you put a time box on me, I got nowhere to say anything, and you gave me a deadline for a curriculum. Not everyone's going to work in that environment. So, that's a big reason of why it even worked was this is truly student voice. Now, as far as getting going, the first thing is if you're like Peter, that's really good, right? If you said, hey, I also believe in this mindset, that I believe in a student first approach. And I'm, as a teacher, also willing to learn alongside, because I know if I do that, it'll help everybody. And that's how SEL works, is when everyone does it. It's not just when you direct it to a group of students. As a teacher, you're probably wondering, okay, how am I going to do SEL? Parents are saying, how am I going to do it? Here's a great way. Empower your students and your teachers to use a program like DistrictZero. That's a great way to show how we can all do SEL, because it'll show you what comes about, right? It shows everyone like, hey, ways to improve without jeopardizing privacy, security. We've put in a lot of work on that. We're proud to say we're on AWS, EdStart, COPPA, FERPA, GDPR, CCPA, SOPA. I mean, got it. Security, got it, right? Privacy, got it. But make that decision, and then from there, just go to DistrictZero.co. If you are a leader, we have an amazing promotion. We literally discounted super heavy for the summer right now. Get in. It's free to get going. Get these check-ins going. Test it with any students that you have, or any classrooms, or even your own home, right? Over the summertime, these blocker resources, our AI system is growing. Our auto suggestions, essentially, they started about a month and a half ago, and now they're just ramping up. That's normally going to be a premium feature that we typically charge like $10 a month or $100 a year. Even we brought it down to $1 a month and like $10 for the whole year, which means think like Google Forms, Google Sheets, Control F, remove all that now. Go in, create your groups, morning check-in for these groups. It'll go out on this day, invite learner, boom, 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 walk away. Even if you can't check the reports, the blockers are being resolved or they're being suggested. And if you say, you know what, I got an hour or two, I want to spend some time really like adding my own thoughts to these check-ins and suggestions, go in and add your own. Yeah. And that's what I would say. If you're a learner, if you're saying, hey, I don't have a leader, maybe it's a hard space, maybe maybe you don't have someone motivational, and you're like, hey, I'm in a tough area. My teachers aren't really or no one's supporting me. Go to the same website, DistrictZero.co, and on the footer at the very bottom, there's an option that says join Uzair's group. I'll be your leader. Now you got a CEO of a tech company as your leader. You got an entrepreneur as your leader. We'll run it together and we'll get you ramped up so you can tackle your blockers, right? So that's how I would say is the next thing to do is just whether you're a teacher, a vocational, K-12, hybrid teacher, head to DistrictZero, request access. You'll get set up within a day. You'll be good to go, up and running. And if you're a learner, go to the same website.
Love it. Love it. And kudos for you for just like, I mean, that's when you know somebody really cares about what they're doing is we're like, I'll be it. Let's go. And we've had that discussion. I think the other thing that I really like with educators is, when we do see surveys, we do see a lot of surveys. We don't see results, or if we see results, they're overwhelming. You've developed the AI behind it to where it does guide. I will tell you one of the things that's very interesting about this and very disruptive, if you will, is I had when a student wasn't doing good, let's just say my own curriculum, which I'm a business teacher. My listeners know, when a student wasn't doing good, there was a lot of assumptions. I'd be like, all right, well, you look tired, or maybe you were out last night, driving cars with buddies in Lakeshore Drive. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm making assumptions. This allows student voice, and then I can actually go back. I don't have to start finding blocker removers or all these things. It's already done. But I also can actually check to see if something is in there. And if it's severe, it does allow me to see it right away. So, there were cases where we did have some severe stuff. Some of it may not be so severe, but let's edge on the safe side. And that's what's wonderful about it. And it's truly disrupting education in a great way to where we're leading with students. I see it a lot with like schools with advisory periods. I see it with like A periods. There's a lot of educators who just, all right, we're just going to throw out the announcements to you. Some schools do a better job than others. Some teachers do a better job than others. This is a great place for that. And again, I'm talking secondary. There's a whole bunch of other things. If you're primary, you're going to want to check this out. It's DistrictZero.co. Uzair, man, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. And, you are an amazing dude. Like I said, amazing with everything, but kick butt, everything. And honestly, if you do want to know more, hit up DistrictZero.co. And I can't wait to see what comes next, man.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we've learned a lot recently over some of the COVID schools, and it's been challenging, but through that, we've, just like any design thinking experiment, what comes about is something that works for a lot of people. So it's going to be exciting. We're just getting started. Definitely sign up. Go to the website that's spelled just like it sounds, DistrictZero.co. And thanks so much, Peter. I love these discussions, work, anything we do. So let's keep it going.
Awesome. And thanks so much for being on Disrupt Education, man. We'll put all that information in the show notes if you guys want to click on those and take a look at if you're a parent, if you're a student, if you're a school. We'll have all that information down there. And thank you all for listening to Disrupt Education. We'll catch you next time on the podcast.